All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford and what Derek James had to say about what the difference is between the two of them, and a big warning to Terence Crawford about what Errol Spence Jr. can do to him. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're in the welterweight division. Errol Spence Jr. and his trainer, Derek James, made a statement in an interview yesterday that was very savage, to say the least, about the Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight coming up. Before I do that, though, and talk about that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a regular supporter, longtime supporter, thank you so much for your participation in the boxing community we have here. Also, if you're new to the channel, please accept my invitation to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos, which we do pretty much on a daily basis. We do live streams every day, videos pretty much every day. So there's always a good opportunity to have a boxing talk about the hottest topics in boxing. And this topic right here, it don't get any hotter than this. Biggest fight in boxing, hopefully will be taking place by the end of this year between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford for the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, the WBO, and the WBC belts. No franchise belt in there, let me say. However, that is what, if you know boxing, you know that is the undisputed championship of the world. Errol Spence Jr. just beat Yordenis Ugas to unify 3 belts. Terence Crawford has the WBO, and they are both talking about fighting each other. There really is nowhere else for either one of them to go in the welterweight division. The only thing that could possibly hold this fight up, I do believe, is the finances and the money related to it. And that is only if, I believe, this is just from what I've been seeing, watching, paying close attention to it, is if Terence Crawford gets a little bit unrealistic about his demands and sticks by some of the things that he has said, some of the things he has said in the past, like wanting 50-50 in the fight. It may be a 50-50 fight in the ring to a lot of people, but it does not mean financially that it's a 50-50 fight. Just not what it is. That's not how that works. However, talking about the fight itself, Errol Spence Jr.'s camp is extremely confident in the outcome of the fight with Terence Crawford, and said something, man, that I thought that I've been trying to communicate to people about the dangers of this fight with Errol Spence Jr. for Terence Crawford, or pretty much anybody that gets in the ring with him at 147 pounds. And that is, you know, the risk that if you can't keep that man off you, that he literally will break you. And there's not a lot of fighters in boxing that are running around they can say that they have broken the bones of multiple people in a boxing ring. The only 2 people that I know I can say that about is the now almost geriatric boxer Guillermo El Chical Rigondeaux, who went on a streak maybe about 5-6 years ago of breaking several people's jaws, right? So with very sharp left hands, right? So it was always a danger for somebody to get in the ring with Guillermo Rigondeaux and get their jaw broke because of how crisp and powerful his left hand is. Well, Errol Spence Jr. is a little bit different than that. Errol Spence Jr., in my opinion, is more of the Bernard Hopkins style beat you up, which is that he is going to be right in your chest and consistently landing big shots on you, and landing a lot of them, right? So when Derek James talked about the fight with Terence Crawford, he literally took a step back and said, you know, I don't know what he can do with Errol. Like, and because Errol is not just out there knocking you out, Errol is literally breaking you. So he's like, you know, with a guy that is fighting like that, with that much volume, that hits that heavy, that is that savvy, and is that good at getting on the inside of you, I don't know what it is that Terence Crawford is going to do to offset that. And, he needs to be very, very careful, because this is the type of dude that, again, will not just knock you out and hit you with one big shot, but will literally break you down, will break your orbital bone, will break your nose, will break your ribs, like he did to your Danny Ugas. That is just a very, very simple, that's a simple truth that when I'm talking to other people, I don't really get that people see that. In a fight with your Danny Ugas, your Danny Ugas career may very well be over with the severity of the punishment that man took. And that is something that I think, could also happen to Kell Brook. Now, people can say, Kell Brook got his eye broken first by Gennady Golovkin, right? And that was a lot of how people kind of explain that away, was that, he broke down and he broke up Kell Brook, but really Kell Brook was already in that situation before, because he made the mistake to moving up there and fighting Gennady Golovkin. But the fact of the matter remains that he still broke that man's orbital bone on the other side. And then you say, well, what has Errol done in the last, in the 3 fights since then? Now, Errol had made an admission that he was not in the best shape and really was not focused in between training camps. And I think that had something to do with the fact that he wasn't knocking those guys out. But still, if you go back and you look at the fights with Mikey Garcia, for example, Mikey Garcia is probably the best, example of that. Man, Mikey Garcia has never been the same. Since then. And I remember watching him in interviews and things maybe like a month after that fight happened. And man, that dude's tongue was still jutting. But he's still never been back to the same level of fighter he was before he got in there with Errol Spence Jr. Sean Porter, in his next 2 fights after the fight with Errol Spence Jr., he didn't look like the same fighter that was fighting Errol Spence, that fought Errol Spence Jr. And Danny Garcia, now he hasn't fought, Danny Garcia was 2 years ago. Danny Garcia hasn't been back in the ring in 2 years, right? So talking about the layoff that Errol took, just think about the fact that Danny Garcia, they were talking about how long the layoff was with Danny Garcia, for Errol Spence Jr. after Danny Garcia, right? Because of the torn retina, right? It wound up being 2 years. Well, Danny Garcia hadn't been in the ring in 2 years after that fight, man. He's kind of took that type of respite that, that Deontay Wilder is probably going to take after those 2 very savage fights with Tyson Fury. Now, again, I want to be very clear for everybody that gets way too emotional about this stuff with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. I'm not saying that Terence Crawford does not have the ability does not have the ability to win that fight. I do know that fight is a competitive fight. All I'm saying is I don't see how he's going to overcome that. I don't see what the obvious roadmap to him to beat Errol Spence Jr. is, but that's not to say that the man is not a great world champion and that he can't figure out a way, because hey man, where there's a will, there's a way, where there's talent and there's skill, there's possibility. And, and nobody has found a way to beat Terence Crawford either. So there's a chance that Errol's pressure, constant pressure, and all that may not work against him, right? He may have that solution in his mind and be able to execute that. All I'm saying is that and I think that Derek James and Errol Spence Jr.'s camp is saying too, is hey man, if you don't figure that out, man, it may be a wrap on your career, man. You know what I mean? Because that type of situation right there if you can't keep that man off you, Terence Crawford ain't built of steel. He's not built. His bones aren't made of different material. It's not Wolverine, right? If you take as much punishment as Errol Spence Jr. is trying to hand out to you, that most definitely can be very, very major problems for you in the boxing ring. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.